Hey, welcome to FreightWaves Friday, friends and neighbors, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the middle of a move here at FreightWaves. It has been a crazy week, and this is the last time that this gigantic hall with these big videos are going to be empty. We're coming in hot and lots of things happening. Another thing that's happening is Transparency 19 is happening May 6th through 8th. If you don't know about it, check it out. That's our hot conference. And you know what? I dare you. I'm laying down the gauntlet right now. I dare you to try to find a conference that is hotter, more innovative, more about freight and tech and innovation than this. Well, you can look, but you won't find, because it is happening in Atlanta at the Georgia International Convention Center in just a few weeks. So check that out. We've got so much we can barely keep up. We're running around with our hair on fire. A couple of things that are exciting about today is that Nick Austin is doing the weather for us and bringing us up to date on that exploding situation happening with the blizzard and what else is happening throughout the rest of our fair land. And also, Zach, yes, that is right, Zach Strickland, the Sultan of Sonar, is going to give us a large overview of what is happening with freight conditions. And yes, now that we're almost into mid-April, there are some things that have been changing around the land. But what do they mean? Well, stay tuned and find out. Nick, hey, what's happening,
Hey,
man?
Chad. Well, we still have the blizzard out there, but there is good news. It's not as bad today as it was the last 2 days. It's losing steam. Doesn't mean it's still not causing trouble out there. This is up across eastern portions of the Dakotas, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, all those areas in the upper Midwest. So
Looks disruptive still.
it's still disruptive, but
What's this? Sorry to interrupt.
oh, well, that's not severe storms or anything, but some heavy areas of rain moving up through parts of the Ohio River Valley and up into the Northeast.
Okay.
But the blizzard itself, it is losing steam. It's still going to be pretty windy across the Dakotas, Minnesota, but instead of 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, which caused a lot of problems with truckers that were actually allowed to be out on some of the roads. There were a lot of closed roads yesterday, interstates,
Yes.
but not everywhere. Minnesota, there were a lot of semi-drivers, truck drivers that got into wrecks. And
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but luckily no major injuries. That's a good thing. No one got hurt, but just a lot of problems on the roads. So the winds won't be as bad today, but they'll still be in that kind of level of blizzard criteria. Okay, there'll still be about 35 to 45 mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
Not as much snow today, but there's still a lot of snow on the roads. And at least as of this morning, according to the South Dakota Department of Transportation, Interstate 90 across almost the entire state of South Dakota still closed, and I-29 from Sioux Falls, South Dakota up to the North Dakota line was still closed, at least as of earlier today. Probably will be all day. Not going to be too much improvement, I don't think, through the weekend, because there won't be a lot of snow melt. So those roads could stay closed through the weekend. So
literally the freight show can't go on in South Dakota.
it's going to be tough, at least on the interstates. And the thing is, in order to get to a lot of the secondary roads, you have to take the exits off the interstates. But that's going to be tough to do. So, and later tonight, for overnight drivers heading into early Saturday across Texas, especially this kind of central strip of Texas here, from around Midland, Texas over to Dallas, severe thunderstorms possible. Not tornadoes necessarily, but a lot of gusty winds along Interstate 20, possibly some torrential downpours and hail here and there too. So just keep that in mind. Stay safe out there. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you. I
bet.
hope that they listen to that, Nick, and don't still try to drive in those difficult conditions, even though I know that the freight show must go on. And by the way, with all of these cool things that our Sonar data platform does, if you want to sign up for a demo, just check us out at freightwaves.com/sonar, and we will be sure to get you in the queue and get you whatever customization and training that you might be interested in. Zach, you are one of our true sonar experts. What do you got for us today?
So we've been talking a lot about the West Coast and Los Angeles and California and all that kind of showing up. And right now, and the market itself has actually been very settled and calm, because all this freight has been moving across the West Coast on California, and not really a lot happening on the East Coast. Well, during the week, we actually had this big spike in tender rejections on Wednesday. And I've got the outbound tender rejection index for the United States pulled up with a couple of regional tender rejections. just to illustrate exactly where the destabilization is happening in the country.
Yeah, we must have a developing situation here, because look at how it has just trended down and down and down, and finally
super stable. So it's kind of just been this real steady pattern of decline, as everybody, every now and again it'll poke up a little bit, but certainly nothing like this. This is the Midwest Tender Rejection Index right here. So that's going to encompass areas like Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, this, where around the Great Lakes region, Minnesota. This region right here has shown a lot of sensitivity to the fact that there may not be enough capacity in this area, or at least in some small pockets. With tender rejection still being relatively low, mind you, if you look back over time and see that back last year, we were still pretty elevated with tender rejection. So they're still historically low. But the move itself is pretty significant, considering it's breaking the pattern. And the other tender rejection I have pulled up here is the Southwest. Areas like El Paso, Laredo have actually increased their tender rejection rate over the last couple of days.
Okay, but is that the seasonality thing that we've been anticipating for about a week?
Everybody tends to call things seasonality. Like it's less about seasonality during these situations. I mean, yes, there is some seasonal impacts there, but it doesn't necessarily seasonality doesn't show up like this. Seasonality shows up kind of a gradual movement and like a smooth pattern. This right here, you could potentially call it seasonality, but it's
when you talk about the Southwest, right?
Yeah. I mean, you see how these are lined up pretty well right here. This is kind of seasonal in the way that it's, around Thanksgiving. We can expect tender rejections to increase around here. April, yeah, there's some seasonality here, but we never really know when it's going to hit. And so it makes it a little bit less predictable.
Right.
We can predict Christmas because that happens the same day every year.
Well, I remember last year, as Donnie Gilbert has told us, that it was April 8th that we saw the first, and it hasn't happened on April 8th, obviously, this year.
Yeah. So there is a seasonality to it, but it's still something that doesn't happen the same every year.
Gotcha.
Is my point. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you. Essentially, we're going to break it down a little bit further. We're going to show you, the West Coast volume itself has been quite elevated over the last 3 to 4 months. And we've been talking a lot about Los Angeles and California and its impact, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But this is the Outbound Tender Volume Index year-over-year change for Salt Lake City and Denver. So Denver's in the orange, Salt Lake City is down here in the mountain view. Year over year, Denver is up 49%. Salt Lake City is up 38% in outbound volumes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a tremendous shift in seasonality, if you will, because it's not the same. Seasonally speaking, the West Coast tends to be settled this time of year. The first quarter is not a heavy West Coast. We're into the second quarter now, but still, it's not a big change. We've been above 10% year over year in both markets for a really long time now.
And they've been dealing with a lot of weather.
Yeah,
headwinds.
Denver had a huge blizzard this week as I was flying across the country, and fortunately didn't have to go through Denver in that situation. But if we pull up the next chart, just to give a little bit of contrast to what's happening on the East Coast, I'm going to give a couple of those bigger markets on the East Coast here, which is going to be Atlanta and Joliet, which is just outside of Chicago. And year over year, you see Atlanta did have a moment where it broke above zero for a few days in early April, late March. But for the most part, it's been below the zero mark. It's negative.
Yeah.
Negative 1.7% year over year growth, negative 10, almost 11% in the Joliet market, these are two of the biggest markets in the country, and they certainly lead the East Coast in terms of outbound volume.
So what do we surmise is going on?
The theory is that all these container flow volumes have been pushed into the West Coast, and they are slowly gravitating towards the east. But what it's done is create this market imbalance where all the carriers have flocked to this freight because you see tender rejections historically low. And if you remember when I was talking about what created that tender rejection spike earlier in the week, it was in the Midwest, the Southwest. These areas have not had a large amount of year-over-year growth. They've been very suppressed. All the freight has been moving in California, Salt Lake City, Denver. The carriers have moved to these areas because it's a slow trending up in terms of outbound volume. So just naturally, they're accepting the freight there, which means they're there, and they're keeping the trucks in the market.
Isn't there a lot of volume coming into ports like a Savannah and Charleston, though?
Yes, Savannah is blowing up traditionally, but it's still not the size of a Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Los Angeles is still the biggest port in the country. Los Angeles and Long Beach, two of the biggest ports in the country.
Gotcha.
And that volume, it behaves a little differently. I mean, it's certainly, you know, if you were going to ship your freight to the East Coast and you had a decent amount of time to get it there and kind of store it, Savannah's a great option for you. But a lot of this freight hops on the rail, goes into Chicago, goes into Memphis. Then some of it gets surface freighted out. What's happened though is a lot of the freight has just been coming into the country, and then they shift it to a warehouse out there in the West, just storing the freight.
What's a takeaway based upon this theory for a carrier or owner-operator? Should they be shifting their positions?
They need to be watching for the sign, you know, kind of like in Ghostbusters where the keymaster tells, I forget her other name, the gatekeeper, watch for the sign, you'll see it. Well, we're probably going to see it happen, you know, somewhat slowly in the next couple of months. You're going to see volume start to pick up in Atlanta, Dallas. Any of these bigger markets is where I'd be paying close attention to any shifting dynamic. And if we pull up my next chart, I'm going to show you an early indication of this shifting dynamic.
Wait for the sign so you don't get slimed.
Yeah, because
right?
You're sitting out on the West Coast. It takes a long time to reposition your fleet. You got to find a load all the way from LA out into Dallas, Chicago, over the road.
Yeah. I would think so.
So this is our head haul index for Los Angeles and Stockton market. These have been the big players in the regional repositioning over the last couple of months. The head haul index measures the amount of outbound loads subtracting the inbound loads. So a high head haul value means that there's a lot more outbound than inbound.
And you're excited about going in there because you will be taking something out in all likelihood.
Carriers love head haul markets. They hate backhaul markets. And these are the consummate examples of both.
And California, Stockton is looking still real healthy, right?
Stockton's actually been, it's a backhaul market, traditionally speaking. But it's been extremely backhaul over the last couple of months. And that's indicated here by these deeply negative head haul values. You see it gets all the way down here in the 130s, 120s, and then here's the Los Angeles market. I'm sorry, if you look at the negative 117 over there. But the Los Angeles market, I'm sorry, I've got Stockton in the green, Los Angeles in the orange. I've backed that up.
Okay.
Negative. So you've got the negative valued Stockton market here in the green and the positive valued head haul market in the orange here for Los Angeles. Stockton, you see, is increasing in value right now, which means that there's going to be a lot more outbound loads than inbound loads coming out. And we did see a volume surge out of Stockton market over the last couple of days.
And that is what we are looking at just like this past week. So this isn't
just in the past few days. Los Angeles, however, they're starting to become a little bit more backhaul-y, if you will.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they're a backhaul market. It just means that they're becoming less of a head haul market currently. And you see that they are crossing over each other right here as they move in opposite directions. It's almost like an inversion.
It looks volatile to me, Zach. We're going back about a month. Look at the way that,
It's a wave, and you see that they actually, and again, this is a dual axis, so don't take too much into this crossing signal right here. Because the scale makes that act a little wonky, but it is still significant that they are moving very dramatically in opposing directions. Yeah. That to me is kind of the first sign, because we did have ports come out and say we had a bad month of February. You know, it was down year over year for the first time, and I can't remember how long, over a year, I believe. So this is kind of the first indication that we're looking at that maybe this heated California market might be starting to change its, position.
Wow, that I feel like my mind is kind of having to absorb this. We've had this is a great overview. Thank you, Zach. we have had such a balanced and slightly, just with rates just slightly trending down just for quite a while. That's been a lot of the story of 2019. Low rates, shippers, finding things like just not hard to find, everything in balance. But now, starting to see a little bit of some signs of what's going on in different parts of the country. Maybe some of it has to do with seasonality, but right now we don't completely know. Maybe some of it's just the transmigration of goods. So we're going to stay tuned. We're going to keep a close eye on these conditions. Can't wait to find out what has happened and developed, even starting back on Monday. We come to you live each and every business day at 4 o'clock. Check us out on social media. We're also on FreightWaves.com. And of course, subscribe to our new YouTube channel, please. And in the meantime, stay dry, stay safe out there, and don't worry, be happy.